Thank you, Mayor. It is an honor to be with all of you today. As the commander of the Colonel Bill Barber American Legion Post 838 and a combat veteran, I am proud of the diverse group of veterans that have come together to create a positive and proactive vision for our community. We are currently working on our annual plan of action items that we would like to support and actively promote. As part of this creative thought process, it made me reflect on what we should communicate and share with our fellow Americans about our veterans. A veteran's service doesn't end when his contract expires. For most of us, it continues. It has been 11 years since I returned home from Iraq, and I have become happier these last 2 years than I was the 9 years before, because I remembered that I am at my best when I am serving others. Today, I serve the veterans of Irvine as the commander of the American Legion Post 838. I serve the active duty Marines as the vice president of the Irvine 211 Marine Adoption Committee. I bring awareness of the arts to the community by serving on the Costa Mesa Cultural Arts Committee. I serve as a voice to the children as their PTA legislative chair. I serve my community as a Morgan Stanley financial advisor here in Irvine. In everything I do, I aim to serve the Lord. I am a wife to my husband and a mother to 2 beautiful children. Veterans are the backbone of this nation, and each generation of veterans brings their experience and patriotism home with them after service. I would like to personally recognize the legacy the Vietnam veterans are leaving to the next generation, which is enormous. You stood together to serve your community after receiving less than a warm welcome home. You rallied and lobbied and taught the nation that a veteran is made of commitment, honor, respect, selfless service, loyalty, duty, and integrity. And you taught them to love and respect the American veteran again. I owe my hero's welcome home to you. I would also like to encourage every veteran here to share their experience with the Veterans History Project promoted by the National Library of Congress. Every veteran's experience is important and needs to be shared. We have information at our American Legion Post 838 table in the back. I would like to tell you a story about a veteran. As a small child, her grandfather would bring her to Memorial Day ceremonies at the cemetery each year. She would sit quietly while the Marines placed a wreath at the memorial in honor of the fallen. A few short years later, she stood at that same cemetery while the Marines came again, this time to pay tribute to her grandfather with a 21-gun salute as the F-15s flew overhead. The Marines handed a carefully wrapped flag to her grandmother. My grandfather, she thought to herself, must be important to the country, because she knew not every funeral was this special. From then on, seeing the American flag and pledging her allegiance to it was her way of remembering her grandfather. It wasn't the spacious skies or amber waves of grain that made her proud to be an American. It was her countrymen who bravely gave their life so she could be spared. The veterans. The sacrifices they were willing to make on her behalf is why she loved her country and considered it an honor to defend it. 12 years later, she enlisted in the Army Reserves. The country was at war, and this was her chance to honorably defend the people of her country and their way of life, like her grandfather had before her. After 2 tours in Iraq, she returned home alive and visibly well. It is a blessing she made it back alive, said her family. Now that she is home, we are whole and can move on. That little girl, now a veteran, as you probably guessed, is me. Now let me pause here to ask, have you ever seen a person with a broken leg, wearing a cast, and hobbling around awkwardly? It is easy for everyone, including the injured, to see what is wrong and what is needed to mend it. He might be offered rides to work and home. Someone would offer to do the shopping and tidy up the house because it is easy to see they need to rest and be given some grace while they heal. However, after a traumatic event such as war, the human brain and spirit cannot be mended with a visible cast. There is no set time or miracle drug to make it whole again. The wounds are invisible to the untrained eye, and because the brain itself doesn't know it needs mending, it presses on, day after day. I didn't know there was anything different about me after my tours in Iraq. One day I was driving through Fallujah, dodging bombs and calling in airstrikes, delivering ammo to the 211 Marines, as a matter of fact. And the next, I was sitting in an office overlooking the ocean back home. Some would call this the real world, but for combat veterans, their experience can change what is real. Before the year was up, I had studied for and passed all of my securities license exams. The following year, I got married and had a daughter. But things were not all right. I'll never forget taking my daughter to a fancy Nancy tea party when she was 3. As we sat in our chairs quietly, I looked over at the other mother and daughter sharing our table. It was obvious the mother was happy to be there as she smiled and spoke to her daughter. At that moment, I honestly thought to myself, in disgust, what was she so happy about? There wasn't one thing I could think of to say to my daughter. I didn't feel I had anything to smile about. She was 3 when she also started jokingly referring to me as the mad mommy. I had no empathy for others, including my husband, who couldn't do anything right, whether it was taking out the trash or making plans. Eventually, I got to the point where I couldn't think of one thing I had ever accomplished. I felt like the Incredible Hulk, going from sobbing in despair to complete rage and hatred every day, sometimes hour after hour. For me and my husband, this was our new normal, and our marriage was in jeopardy. I was convinced I was a complete failure, and my husband and children were better off without me. This is what PTSD does to a person. My wound had gone unnurtured for 5 years, and it had grown like ivy, slowly and unnoticed, until it had completely taken over. Fortunately for me, I have a strong family and network of friends that stepped in to change the course of my life. There are many more like me and my husband. Some of our brothers and sisters made it home from the war only to succumb to their PTSD or other war-related injuries and are no longer with us. Others are still battling the horrible effects, not knowing they are suffering from invisible war wounds. And others are getting the help and loving support they need. To my fellow veterans, you and I didn't fight for the love of fighting. We fought because we were asked. And we did it to the best of our ability out of love for our brothers beside us and our families back at home. This love drives us still today. That's why Post 838 stands on 3 pillars: camaraderie, community, and commitment. By finding ways to spend time together, we build a mutual trust and friendship. We are active in making our hometown a better place to live, and we are an unparalleled force for the social betterment of veterans. If you see a brother or sister in need, say something, do something. If we were willing to sacrifice ourselves so they could live while we were in battle, surely we are willing to sacrifice our time to keep them alive now that we're home. Another veteran is sometimes the only person who can understand what a veteran is going through. To everyone here today, please join us by reaching out to a veteran you know or meet. Nurture them and show them grace until they discover the best version of themselves again. The City of Irvine has been a great support to our active duty military, veterans, and our fallen heroes, and I thank you for your continued support. Thank you to the veterans who are here today and all those who served with honor who could not be here. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Commander Chrystal, for serving our country and having gone through personal difficulties.